Now, if you could please advance to the next slide, I want to just give you a case study that was very helpful for me in understanding why that happened. Now, this is a study of the steel industry. And for those of you who haven't yet made a lot of steel in your lives, let me explain what's been going on, especially in the North American market. And now it's happening in Europe and Australia. It has not yet begun in India and China, but it will. Most of the world's steel historically has been made in huge integrated mills of the sort that Mittal has acquired and operates. It costs today about $8 billion to build a new integrated steel mill. The other way to make steel is in what they call a mini mill. Mini mills melt scrap steel in electric furnaces, and you could easily fit 10 electric furnaces in this room. Because you can get molten steel in such a small chamber, you don't have to scale up the downstream process steps, and that's why they call it a mini mill. The most important dimension of a mini mill is you can make steel in it of any given quality for 20% lower cost than you can make it in a big integrated mill. Now just think about this for a minute. Imagine you were running a steel company somewhere in the world. In a really good year, your profit as a percent of sales will be between 2 and 5%. Here's a technology which, if you implemented it in your company, would reduce your full cost of making steel by 20%. Don't you think you'd adopt this new technology? And yet not a single integrated steel company anywhere in the world has yet successfully built and operated a mini mill. Now, a few of the integrated companies have belatedly bought these mini mills after they became very successful, but none of them have been able to start one. And this is my sense for why something that makes so much sense can actually be impossible for smart managers to do, and why disruption then becomes a real threat to them. So I plotted on that screen the tiers in the marketplace for steel. At the bottom of the market is the simplest of the products, concrete reinforcing bar. And then it tiers up. The most complicated product to make is sheet steel that's used in making cars and appliances. At the beginning of this story, the integrated steel companies made the full range of those products, and they owned the entire market. In the late 1960s, mini mills became technologically viable. But because they melted scrap in these electric furnaces, the quality they could make was really crummy. In fact, the only market that would buy what mini mills made was the concrete reinforcing bar market way down at the bottom, because there are almost no specifications for rebar anyway, and then once you buried it in cement, you could never verify if it met spec or not. So it was really a great market for crummy products. As they attacked the bottom of the market, the reaction of the integrated mills was they were so happy to get out of that business. It was really a dog-eat-dog commodity. You can see on the chart that their gross profits were only 7%. It accounted only for 4% of the industry's tons. And so as the mini mills expanded their capacity to make rebar, the integrated mills shut the rebar lines down, or they converted them to make angle iron and thicker bar and rod. And the reason is, you can see on the chart, they could make 12% margins there. It never made sense to defend a 7% margin business against low-cost competitors when you had the option to strengthen market share in a 12% business. Then an interesting thing happened. As the integrated mills lopped off the lowest profit part of their product line, their reported profit margins to the financial markets improved, so it felt good to get out. The mini mills, because they had a 20% cost advantage, their profit margins were beautiful as well, so it felt good to get in. And everything was all right in the industry until 1979. That was the year when the mini mills in North America finally succeeded in driving the last high-cost integrated mill out of rebar. So now they owned the market. And if you look at what happened to the price of rebar in 1979, it collapsed by 20%. It turns out that there's just a subtle fact about strategy that we had never thought about before, and that is a low-cost strategy only works when there's a high-cost competitor in the market. And as soon as they had succeeded in driving the last high-cost competitor up, then it was just low-cost mini-mill fighting against low-cost mini-mill in a commodity market, and very quickly competition drove prices down to the point where they couldn't make any money in rebar. So what are these poor companies going to do? Well, they look up market and realize, gosh, if we could figure out how to make bigger and better steel and attack the angle iron and bar and rod piece of the business, we'd make money again because the margins are so much better. And so they stretch their ability from rebar up to the next tier of the market. And as they hit that tier, the reaction of the integrated mills was just the same as it had been before. And that is, they were so relieved to get out of that business because it was a dog-eat-dog commodity. And why would they ever invest to defend a 12% margin business when up the top of there you could see in structural beams they could make 18% margins? And so as the mini mills expanded their capacity, integrated mills just shut the lines down or they reconfigured them to make big structural beams. And the very same thing happened. As the integrated mills lopped off the lowest profit part of the product line, their reported profit margins to the financial markets improved again. And as the mini mills got into the very same products that the integrated mills got out of, they found they had a 20% cost advantage again. So it felt good to get out and good to get in. And everything was okay until 1984. And that was the year when in North America, the mini mills finally succeeded in driving the last high-cost integrated mill out of that market. And as soon as the high-cost competitors were gone, the price of those products collapsed by 20% because they had no cost advantage anymore. So what do you think these poor mini mills are going to do? They just have to keep moving up because it's only if they keep moving up market that they can preserve their 20% cost advantage. As they then stretch their ability from making angle iron to making little 4-inch I-beams, right at the bottom of the structural steel market, the reaction of the integrated mills was, gosh, if we just give that to them, our profit margins will improve again. And little by little, the mini mills ate their way through the structural beam market. By 1996, they had the whole market to themselves. The high-cost competitors had all fled up market to sheet steel where the margins were better. And then in structural beams, as soon as the high-cost competitors were gone, the prices collapsed. And the mini mills just had to move up into the sheet steel market. So today in North America, the mini mills own about 60% of the market. And all but one of the integrated mills went bankrupt. Now you notice that I was able to tell the whole story without using the word stupid manager once, because there was no stupidity involved on either side of that equation. In fact, if you and I had been smart enough to buy stock in a basket of integrated steel companies in 1982 and had sold it in the mid-90s, we would have multiplied our investment by 32 times because they were doing everything that the financial analysts and business school professors say they should do. They were listening to the needs of their very best customers at the high end of the market, and they were focusing their investments where the profit margins were most attractive. And those are principles of good management, and they provide very good guidance to companies as they move up that trajectory of performance. But when a disruption comes in at the bottom of a market, those same principles of good management paralyze a well-run company and make it almost impossible for them to respond.